Chapter 13, Applications for Governments. If you believe the hype and the enthusiasm of the blockchain religious zealots, nothing will ever be the same once the world wakes up to the endless possibilities of the technology, with the revolution expected to affect everything from finance and healthcare to transportation and supply chains. However, moving beyond the hype, while there are many projects under development, there are still surprisingly few examples of projects that have actually gained traction, especially considering the market capitalization of the entire crypto space. Nevertheless, it is worth reviewing some of the areas where the cryptocurrency proponents hope blockchain technology will make an impact. To begin with, many of the functions of government are envisioned to be prime candidates for disruption. Transparency in government budgets. As mentioned earlier in this book, the ability of the blockchain to expose previously private transactions to the public eye means that it could be possible in the future to allow citizens to pay their taxes in cryptocurrency. If cryptocurrencies could be transferred to an address controlled by a government's tax collection agency, then it would be possible for citizens to literally see where their taxes are spent. Provided the government labels its cryptocurrency addresses, anyone would be able to find out how the money is allocated. This would mean that taxpayers would be able to know in real time how much money is being spent on what, how much on defense, how much on healthcare, etc. It would also be possible to know the salaries of politicians and how much is being spent on expense accounts and other perks. Scandals like the Nikki Haley curtain expense fiasco, where the UN representative for the US spent over $50,000 on automatic curtains for her New York residence, would just be the tip of the iceberg, as taxpayers would be able to analyze every minute transaction executed by every government official. The advent of smart contracts on the blockchain can also aid government point-of-sale tax collection. It would be possible to create smart contracts that automatically pay, for example, consumption taxes directly to the government coffers when the consumer makes a purchase, and at the same time keep an indelible receipt as undeniable proof that those taxes were paid. This level of scrutiny is unprecedented and almost unimaginable until now. Understandably, the current political class would not be too fond of allowing public access to this kind of information, so expect political resistance to its implementation. Nevertheless, the technology required to achieve this end already exists. Identity verification. Fake identities cause a lot of problems for governments, particularly in regard to organized crime. Blockchains could enhance the reliability of identity verification by creating an immutable record of a person's identity. One way this could be achieved would be by creating a file detailing someone's identity information, including their photo, biometric data, and other personal information. That file could then be hashed, the method mentioned in an earlier chapter, whereby a unique digital fingerprint for that file is created using a hashing algorithm. Then the hash could be recorded on the blockchain with the corresponding timestamp for the exact time it was uploaded. The transaction that records that hash on the blockchain would also be signed by the government authority responsible for verifying identity claims. Thus, it would be possible for people to verify the contents of the file by cross-referencing the hash of the offline file with the hash stored on the blockchain. The signature proves that the information has been authenticated, and the timestamp proves that the file hasn't been altered since the time the hash was uploaded. Thus, anyone checking the data online can be confident the information in the file is authentic and approved. Increasing the amount of data points, for example, adding fingerprint data, etc., increases the confidence the person checking the data has in the identity of the subject. Voting. Another fantastic candidate for the application of blockchain technology is elections. A blockchain could conceivably enhance the security and verifiability of election results. One possible way a blockchain electoral system could function is that the election authority for a country could create a decentralized platform on which citizens each generate a blockchain address that is formally linked to their blockchain identity, as described earlier. The citizen would be the only person in possession of the private keys for that address, so any signed transactions from that address would have to be signed by that person. In an election scenario, a citizen would express their voting choice by signing a transaction to transfer a token to an address representing either candidate A or candidate B. Once the transaction is signed and written onto the blockchain, it is impossible for anyone to tamper with that record, and no one else would be in possession of the private keys for that particular address. This differs significantly in comparison to a normal database which could conceivably have votes altered or deleted by a third-party hacker according to their own preference. The reliability of databases has been one of the major stumbling blocks to electronic voting in the past. If blockchain technology makes electronic voting more trustworthy, then the idea of a more decentralized democracy where citizens are able to override the decisions of their representatives on particular decisions by simply clicking a button on their smartphone becomes a realistic possibility. For example, Australia has already seen candidates in elections that support this concept of online direct democracy, whereby the elected representative constantly polls their own electorate on decisions to be voted on in Parliament. Adding blockchain functionality to this idea would completely revolutionize democratic institutions around the world. Blockchain voting does have its drawbacks, though. Even programmers doubt the security of their own art, and designing a 100% security bug-free system is particularly difficult, especially with so much at stake. Even compared to financial transactions, like, for example, the programming behind an ATM machine, voting has a lot more at stake. If an ATM has a bug, the bank loses a few $1,000s. If a voting machine has a bug, the whole direction of a country can change. Another issue is created by the blockchain's greatest virtue, its indelible record keeping. Citizens don't necessarily want their political voting record to be kept forever, as that information could be misused by a disingenuous government. Governments also need to remain conscious of the fact that blockchain technology is not necessarily future-proof. The voting system could be cracked by some future hacker who develops high-tech devices that can override whatever security technology we've created today that's only optimized for already existing security threats. The advent of quantum computing in the future is more than likely to render all current encryption standards obsolete, and thus it would require updating of the blockchain system. Carbon trading credits. Governments around the world, particularly in Europe, have introduced carbon trading credits to make polluters pay for their excessive contribution to the global production of chemicals that cause global warming. Each credit entitles the owner to create a certain amount of greenhouse gases in their industrial production processes. Under the trading framework, countries allocate a certain amount of carbon credits to companies, who in turn can sell the credits if they aren't needed, or buy extra credits if they need more to cover their pollution output. Thus, cleaner industries sell their credits to dirtier industries. This creates the incentive for companies to reduce their levels of greenhouse gas emissions to reduce the costs of buying credits. This also makes companies pay for the pollution externalities their industrial pollution causes. Encoding these credits as blockchain tokens would simplify the trading of credits between companies and also add a level of public accountability, as the entire process would achieve increased transparency, as all transactions and holdings of credits would be publicly visible on the blockchain and easily auditable by third parties. This kind of certainty is not possible with a normal database, which can easily be altered unbeknownst to the participants in the scheme. It would also open the market up completely, allowing investors to obtain credits and potentially create an entirely new class of asset, as the credits start to behave like commodities with real-world value. Land registry. Most governments maintain centralized land registries that may find less benefit from running a blockchain-based land registry system. However, blockchains could be applicable in countries that have a title deed system like the US, where property transactions can be conducted privately and the new owner only registers the change in ownership with the government after the transaction has been completed. Some governments have already experimented with implementing blockchain technology in their deed registry, and there are in fact examples in the US where counties have legally recognized the migration of certain land deeds to the blockchain. Next episode of WTF is Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency and blockchain guide for dinner parties, we'll be reading Chapter 14, Applications for Commerce, and we'll focus on the areas of business like pharmaceuticals, supply chain logistics, and stock markets where blockchains could make a difference. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't hesitate to like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast with anyone you think will enjoy it. It really helps us reach a much larger audience.